The sound of the orbital shuttles roared through the glass canopy of Nairobi Spire Station, streaking the afternoon sky with trails of blue plasma. Beneath the hum of traffic and neon billboards, Zuri Nyemba walked with steady purpose through the terminal. Her braids shimmered with silver thread that caught the light of distant stars, and her amber eyes carried the calm of someone who had learned to command silence with a glance. Zuri was a daughter of the African Coalition, the political and cultural heart of humanity's power in the Milky Way. Her ancestors had once walked the plains of Kenya and the shores of Lake Victoria. Now their descendants walked among stars. The coalition had become a symbol of progress, its cities a harmony of tradition and innovation. Drones hummed alongside street vendors. Holograms projected art inspired by Yoruba and Maasai folklore. Yet beneath all that brilliance, Zuri felt a tremor in her chest, a warning. Today was not just another council session. It was the day she would be told of her supposed destiny. The Galactic Council met aboard the Iris Core, a station that hovered in the calm orbit of a binary sun. As Zuri entered the shuttle that would take her there, she looked back once at Earth's curve below, glowing faintly in the distance. "Don't forget who you are," her mother had told her before she left. The memory echoed now like a prayer. Inside the shuttle, she sat across from Leila Kamau, her oldest friend, a scientist from the Coalition's Orbital Academy. Her head shaved smooth, eyes sharp as obsidian. "You ready for this?" Leila asked, folding her arms. Zuri smiled faintly. "Ready or not, it's coming." Leila leaned closer. "They say the advisor has something ancient, a decree from before the human accords." Zuri arched a brow. "Ancient laws don't rule me. Not anymore." The shuttle jolted as it broke through the Iris Core's atmosphere, the view beyond the window transforming into a vast expanse of floating spires and mirrored domes, connected by golden light bridges. The council hall rose in the center, colossal and serene, where the galaxy's leaders debated the fate of millions. When Zuri stepped into the chamber, she felt every eye on her. Representatives of alien species, some scaled, others crystalline or luminous, turned their gaze toward the human ambassador. They respected humanity's resilience, but mistrust lingered, born from centuries of wars and negotiations that reshaped empires. At the center stood Kelek, the alien advisor. His tall, slender form shimmered under his cloak of liquid metal, his features angular and unreadable. His voice resonated through the hall, low and deliberate. "Zuri Nyemba of Earth," he began, "the Council acknowledges your service, your wisdom, and your dedication to peace among the stars." Zuri nodded slightly, the formalities familiar. "I am honored to serve the Coalition and the Council." Kelek's silver eyes gleamed. "Then it is with great privilege that I reveal what has been decreed, your union with Varkor of the Drathan Empire, Lord of the Outer Reach. The bond will solidify the truce and secure peace for generations." The hall fell silent. Even the hum of the core seemed to pause. Zuri's throat tightened. "So you're telling me," she said slowly, "that I am promised to a warlord I have never met?" "It is tradition," Kelek replied. "The Drathan have demanded a gesture of goodwill. You are the chosen one." Leila rose from her seat. "Chosen? She didn't choose this." Murmurs rippled across the chamber. Zuri's pulse thundered, but her voice was calm. "Advisor, humanity does not trade its daughters for treaties. Not now, not ever." Kelek's expression remained unreadable. "Defiance," he said softly, "has cost your species dearly before. Do not repeat history." Zuri stepped forward. "History is why I will not bow." Her gaze swept across the council, meeting the eyes of every representative present. "If the galaxy demands submission in exchange for peace, then it has forgotten what peace means." Gasps echoed. The hall vibrated with tension, but Zuri stood unyielding, her heart blazing with defiance that carried centuries of strength behind it. She felt the eyes of her ancestors upon her, and whispered to herself, "They can promise me to a warlord, but they will never own me." The council chamber remained heavy with silence after Zuri's declaration. Even the air seemed to resist moving. Kelek's silver cloak rippled as though caught in a phantom breeze, his eyes reflecting irritation wrapped in diplomacy. "So you misunderstand, Ambassador," he said with a thin smile. "This is not a demand. It is a destiny written long before you were born." Zuri's jaw tightened. Destiny is a word used by those who fear choice. Whispers flared among the delegates. The representative of the Serathi clacked his mandibles. The translucent Olaran delegate shifted colors like an anxious pulse. The humans from the African Coalition delegation exchanged uneasy glances. None of them had known of this supposed agreement. Kelek's voice cut through the murmurs. "Varkor, the Feral of Drathan, has risen from the ashes of 1,000 wars. His reign unites half the outer reach. He honors the old rights of alliance through blood and bond. It is his right to claim his promised bride." Layla's voice cracked across the chamber like a whip. "Claim? She's not property." Kelek turned to her, expression still unreadable. "Peace requires sacrifice. You of all people should know this, Dr. Kamau. Your people rebuilt from ruin because they understood what surrender could save." Zuri's hand clenched at her side. "We rebuilt because we refused to surrender." The advisor's expression hardened. "Defy this union and the outer reach will see it as insult. The Warlord's fleets are already aligned near the perimeter veil. They await the Council's confirmation. Reject him and they will not wait long." A tremor of fear rippled through the delegates. The perimeter veil guarded dozens of colonized worlds. A war there could unravel the fragile peace humans had fought centuries to earn. Zuri drew a breath, forcing calm. "You would let the galaxy burn because one man's pride was bruised?" "It is not about pride," Kelek said. "It is balance. You humans upset it with every advancement, every expansion, every rebellion. Varkor's claim restores order." Zuri met his gaze. "Then maybe order needs to change." Kelek's expression flickered, a hint of warning behind his metallic composure. "Careful, Ambassador. Words can build empires or destroy them." Zuri turned away from him, her mind racing. The chamber lights dimmed as the council recessed, and she walked toward the corridor with Layla close behind. "They've already decided," Zuri said, voice low. "They wanted me here just to make it official," Layla frowned. "We'll find a way around it. Raoul's still at the fleet command on Mars. He'll know something." Zuri nodded, though her thoughts churned like storm clouds. Later, in her quarters aboard the Iris Core, she opened the encrypted transmission Layla had sent. A holographic briefing flickered to life above her desk. Images of the Drathan filled the air. Towering reptilian beings wrapped in armor, forged from their planet's volcanic ore. Their warlord, Varkor, dominated the display, tall, muscled, his eyes burning with the cold fire of conquest. "Varkor the Feral," Layla's recorded voice said, "conqueror of 12 systems, known for his campaigns in the Crimson Belt and the siege of Ythra Prime. He's no diplomat, Zuri. He's a predator wearing a crown." Zuri studied the image. "Then why does the Council bow to him?" "Because he has the fleets," Layla replied. "And because fear travels faster than reason." Zuri closed the transmission, her reflection hovering faintly in the projection's fading glow. She thought of her mother's words again. "Don't forget who you are." Her heart ached with the weight of heritage, of generations who had fought not to be conquered. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. A message from Kelek appeared on the comm panel. "The Warlord requests an audience before the next session. He will arrive within 2 solar rotations." Zuri stared at the message. The air in her room felt heavier, pressing against her lungs. She didn't know whether it was fear or fury that made her hands tremble. Layla entered quietly. "You saw it?" "Yes." "So what now?" Zuri exhaled slowly. "Now, we prepare." Layla raised a brow. "For what?" "For a fight no one expects us to win." The hum of the station deepened, echoing the pulse of her resolve. Somewhere beyond the binary suns, a warlord prepared to claim what he believed was his by right. But on the Eris Core, one human woman prepared to remind the galaxy that no one owned her future, and she would not yield quietly. When the Galactic Council reconvened, the atmosphere felt like charged air before a thunderstorm. Every faction had spent the last day whispering in corridors, drafting statements, forming fragile alliances. Zuri could feel their eyes on her even before she stepped into the hall. The sound of the chamber doors closing behind her was like the sealing of a trial. The Iris Core's great chamber gleamed with cold light from the twin suns beyond its transparent walls. Rows of alien dignitaries shimmered in metallic robes, crystalline shells, or iridescent scales. The human delegation from the African coalition sat proudly together, their garments woven with gold thread insignias of Earth's United Nations. Despite the elegance, tension sat thick in the air, as visible as vapor. Zuri took her seat beside Layla and Commander Raul Onyango, who had arrived overnight from Mars. His frame filled his uniform, his deep brown skin catching the blue sheen of the chamber's lights. A scar traced a faint line from his cheekbone to his jaw, not from battle but from the collapse of the dome during the lunar evacuation years ago. He was a man who understood loss. "Quite the mess you've stirred," he murmured under his breath. Zuri's lips curved faintly. Someone had to stir it. The council's speaker, a gelatinous being whose body pulsed with shades of green and violet, addressed the assembly. "Ambassador Nyemba's declaration has disrupted the ongoing peace process. The Drathan fleets have halted movement at the perimeter veil." "For now." A chorus of alien voices rose. The Kalari delegate hissed, "Human defiance again. Always the same pattern. Rebellion dressed as righteousness." Raul leaned toward Zuri, muttering, "They fear us because we don't kneel." Across the chamber, the Olaran ambassador shimmered bright blue, speaking in a tone that quivered like music. Perhaps we should not blame the ambassador, but the outdated customs that forced her hand. Zuri met the Olaran's translucent gaze. "I appreciate your words," she said, standing. "But let's be clear. I did not defy anyone's customs. I defended the right of every being to choose their own path. If that is rebellion, then rebellion is honor." A murmur of surprise spread through the council. The speaker's tone sharpened. "Ambassador Nyemba, the council values diplomacy, not defiance. The Outer Reach considers your rejection a threat to their sovereignty." Zuri's voice remained steady. "And I consider forced servitude a threat to mine." Kelek rose from his seat, his cloak whispering across the floor. "You speak boldly for one whose homeworld sits within striking distance of Varkor's armada. Do you intend to challenge him personally?" Zuri met his gaze, unflinching. "If I must." The chamber erupted. Some delegates gasped, others laughed, and a few murmured words of admiration. Raul's expression darkened. Layla's hands tightened on the edge of the table. Kelek's metallic face reflected the room's divided emotions. "You would pit your fragile flesh against a warlord who crushed empires." Zuri's tone was quiet, but unyielding. "You mistake flesh for weakness." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the speaker announced, "The council will deliberate. All parties will submit their recommendations by the next rotation." As the session adjourned, Raul turned to Zuri, voice low. "You just declared open defiance in front of 12 species. You realize that, right?" Zuri exhaled. They needed to hear it. Layla shook her head. "You think they'll respect courage? They'll call it human arrogance again." "Then let them," Zuri said. "Respect will come later." They walked together through the corridors, the murmur of alien tongues echoing around them. Every step carried the weight of centuries. Humanity's struggle to be seen not as invaders, not as curiosities, but as equals. Raul slowed his pace. "You've got half the council watching, and the other half waiting for you to fail. You need allies, Zuri. Real ones." "I have them," she said, glancing at him and Layla. Layla sighed. "We're 3 people, and a cause that terrifies half the galaxy." Zuri's smile returned, small but certain. "Then we're enough to start something that can't be stopped." Ahead, the light of the twin suns poured through the corridor windows, bathing them in gold. Zuri paused, feeling its warmth on her skin, a reminder of home, of Earth, of all that still needed protecting. Behind her, whispers followed like shadows, but her resolve burned brighter than their doubts. And somewhere beyond those twin suns, a warlord was already preparing to test that resolve. Zuri stood on the observation deck, staring into the velvet expanse of the galaxy. The twin suns of the Eris core glimmered in the distance, their light washing over her in fractured hues of gold and crimson. Her reflection in the glass looked composed, but beneath the surface her pulse trembled like a drumbeat, steady but anxious. She heard the soft hiss of the doors before she turned. Kellick's reflection joined hers, his metallic silhouette gleaming like liquid mercury. "Ambassador Niemba," he said, his tone smooth but carrying the weight of something sharper beneath. "You speak like a warrior, yet you forget where you stand. The Council's patience is not infinite." Zuri didn't look at him. Neither is humanity's tolerance for being dictated to. He stepped closer. "You've made your defiance clear, but you should understand the scale of what you challenge. Varkor's fleets span half the outer reach. Entire worlds bend to his will. His banners already fly over planets that once dared to refuse his alliance." "I'm not one of his worlds," she said quietly. Kellick's voice hardened. "You misunderstand me. This is not about you, Zuri Niemba. This is about balance. The Drathan Warlord has agreed to peace. Fragile, yes, but peace nonetheless. You would tear it apart for your pride." She turned to face him then. "My pride is not what's at stake. My freedom is." For a heartbeat, something like frustration flickered across his face. "You humans," he said, almost to himself, "always so attached to your ideals. You believe conviction can protect you from plasma fire and planetary sieges." Zuri's eyes narrowed. "No. But conviction is what keeps us standing when everything else falls." The advisor regarded her in silence, his expression unreadable. Then his voice softened, almost pitying. "You think this is about love or slavery. It is about survival. Varkor's marriage offer ensures your planet's safety. Reject it, and his wrath will not stop at your coalition's borders. Are you threatening Earth? I'm offering you mercy." Zuri stepped closer, until she could see the faint shimmer of energy coursing beneath his metallic skin. "Mercy built on fear is no mercy at all. Tell your warlord that if he wants peace, he can speak to me, not own me." Kellick tilted his head. "You don't understand what he is. He doesn't negotiate, he consumes. The last envoy to refuse him saw her moon burned into glass." Zuri's stomach tightened, but she kept her voice calm. "Then maybe it's time someone told him no." Kellick sighed, a sound like shifting metal. "You speak of courage as if it were armor. It's not. It's paper in the fire of real power. When the Drathan come, you will see what that means." Her gaze didn't waver. "Let them come." He studied her for a long moment. "You would rather bring destruction on your people than bend." "I would rather die free than live as a symbol of submission." The advisor's silver eyes dimmed slightly, the closest thing his kind had to a frown. "Then you will die," he murmured, almost regretfully. "And so will many who believe in you." Zuri took a slow breath, feeling the gravity of his words settle into her chest. The truth was, part of her feared he might be right. War had a way of devouring everything, ideals, hopes, even heroes. But fear had never dictated her choices. When Kellick finally turned to leave, his parting words hung in the air like smoke. "The Council will not protect you when the Drathan move, and they will move soon. Pray that your defiance brings meaning to the ashes." After he left, silence reclaimed the deck. Zuri placed her hand against the glass, watching the reflection of distant constellations ripple across her palm. Her throat felt tight, her heartbeat steadying into resolve. Layla's voice came softly from behind her. "He came to intimidate you, didn't he?" Zuri nodded. "He tried." "And?" "I told him I'm not afraid." Layla's lips curved faintly. "Are you sure about that?" "No," Zuri admitted. "But courage isn't the absence of fear. It's what you do in spite of it." Layla's gaze lingered on her friend. "Then we'd better start preparing for what comes next." Zuri turned back to the stars, their cold brilliance mirrored in her eyes. "Whatever comes, Layla, humanity won't bow again. Not now. Not ever." The words settled in the stillness, a promise and a warning. The first morning of training began before the artificial dawn rose over the Iris core. The station's massive ring of light was still dim, the corridors hushed except for the rhythmic hum of power conduits. Zuri stood in the training hall, barefoot on the metallic floor, her body tense, her mind distant. Every breath she drew felt heavy, as though the air itself resisted her determination. Raul Onyango entered carrying a small case of combat gear. "You didn't even sleep," he said, setting it down beside her. "Sleep doesn't win wars," Zuri replied. Raul chuckled softly. "Neither does exhaustion. You're going to need focus, not fury." Layla joined them moments later, her arms full of diagnostic tools and hollow modules. "We've programmed the simulation grid," she said. "Environment replication, opponent algorithms, everything you asked for. But I'll be honest, Zuri, fighting a Drathan isn't like fighting anything human. Their physiology is beyond anything the Coalition has catalogued." "I'm not fighting a species," Zuri said. "I'm fighting an idea." Raul raised a brow. "Then train like it, because that idea is wrapped in 600 pounds of armored muscle." They began the drills. Zuri moved through strikes and evasions, guided by the projections that flickered to life around her, holographic warriors shaped like Drathan soldiers, their scales glinting under the training lights. The simulations attacked in silence, their blows heavy, deliberate. Raul circled her, barking commands. "Again! Don't meet strength with strength. Redirect it." Zuri pivoted, dodging a swing, then countered with a calculated strike to the opponent's weak point. The hologram dissolved in a shimmer of light, but she didn't stop. Sweat ran down her neck, her breathing grew ragged. She reset her stance, ready for the next opponent. Between rounds, Layla adjusted her wristband monitor. "Heart rate's through the roof," she muttered. "You're pushing too hard." "I don't have time to be careful," Zuri said. Layla looked at her, eyes softening. "Zuri, you're preparing for something that was never meant to be fair. You're trying to outthink a warlord bred for destruction." Zuri paused, catching her breath. "Then I'll give him something he's never faced before, someone who refuses to be broken." Hours passed in relentless rhythm. Attack, block, recover. The training hall echoed with the sound of impact and determination. Raul pushed her beyond exhaustion, his voice steady but fierce. "Control the fear, Raul. Let it sharpen you, not blind you." When they paused for water, Raul sat beside her on the floor, his tone quieter now. "You know this isn't just about survival, right? The whole Coalition's watching. If you fall, they'll use it as proof humanity can't stand alone." Zuri looked up, her face glistening with sweat. "Then I can't fall." Layla handed her a towel, her expression a mix of admiration and worry. "You always carry too much on your shoulders." "Someone has to," Zuri said. Layla hesitated. "And what if it's not enough?" Zuri's gaze turned distant. "Then I'll make it enough." Later that evening, the three of them stood in the observation deck overlooking the training hall. The artificial lights mimicked twilight, casting everything in deep gold. Raul leaned against the railing. "You're improving faster than I expected," he said. "But a duel with Varkor isn't just physical. He'll use intimidation, fear, as a weapon." "I've faced fear before," Zuri said. "On Earth we called it survival." Raul nodded slowly. "Then remember that. Remember who you are." Her reflection in the glass stared back at her, strong, unyielding, yet carrying the quiet weight of 1,000 ancestors who had endured worse and prevailed. Layla placed a hand on her shoulder. "Tomorrow we start real combat simulations. No holds barred." Zuri's voice was steady. "Good. I want to know what it feels like to stand at the edge and not flinch." The hum of the core deepened around them, like the slow pulse of a giant heart. Zuri turned her gaze toward the stars beyond the station, each one burning in the darkness. She whispered to herself, not as a vow but as a truth already written within her. "If the galaxy wants to test humanity's strength, they'll have to face mine first." The journey to Calithar took 3 rotations, and with each passing hour, Zuri felt the weight of destiny press heavier against her chest. The transport vessel cut through the darkness like a blade, engines whispering against the silence of deep space. She stood near the observation window, watching the distant stars drift like slow-moving embers. Ahead lay Calithar, the ancient world where honor was tested and fates were sealed. Raoul approached, fastening his uniform's collar. "You ever been to Calithar before?" Zuri shook her head. "Only heard the stories. They say the ground remembers every battle fought there." Layla glanced up from her console. "And they say the sand never forgets blood." Zuri smirked faintly. "Good thing I don't plan to bleed." Layla gave her a look. "You know it's not that simple." "I know," Zuri said softly, her gaze distant. "But I need to believe it for now." As the ship descended through Calithar's atmosphere, the world revealed itself. Vast plains of copper dust stretching to the horizon, broken by jagged stone formations that shimmered under a dim sun. Ancient towers rose from the desert, remnants of a civilization long gone. It was said that every species in the galaxy had fought here once, and the planet had become neutral ground, a sacred place for trials of honor. The Council's envoy met them at the landing platform, flanked by armored guards. Zuri stepped forward, wearing her coalition emblem across her chest, its golden threads glinting under the harsh light. The envoy bowed slightly. "Ambassador Nyemba, by order of the Galactic Council, the Duel of Accord has been sanctioned. Preparations are underway." Zuri's jaw tightened. "So it begins." Raoul's voice was low beside her. "Once you step into that arena, there's no diplomacy, no negotiation, just survival." Zuri nodded. "Then that's where I'll remind them who we are." They were led through a network of tunnels carved into the planet's crust. The air was dry and carried the faint metallic scent of dust and old energy fields. Along the walls were carvings, depictions of warriors from countless species, immortalized in their final stands. Zuri ran her fingers over one, a figure whose face was half erased by time. "How many came here believing they were ready?" she murmured. Layla's voice echoed softly. "How many left alive?" When they emerged into the open, the arena stretched before them, a colossal circle of obsidian stone surrounded by terraces filled with delegates and soldiers from across the galaxy. The sky above was tinted bronze, and the air hummed with static from the energy shields that enclosed the battleground. Zuri stood at the edge, absorbing the immensity of it. For the first time, she felt the sharp edge of fear cut through her composure, not for herself, but for what her defeat could mean for humanity. Raoul placed a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone." She looked at him. "You're wrong. I have to prove it to everyone." He smiled faintly. "Then do it the way you always have. Not through power, but through purpose." Before they could say more, a voice echoed through the comm system. "All combatants prepare. The duel will commence at first light." Layla pulled Zuri aside, her tone urgent. "I've analyzed the arena's structure. The ground is rich in conductive minerals. It can amplify energy-based attacks. If you can force Varkor to overuse his armor systems, he might short his own defenses." Zuri listened intently. "So my strength isn't brute force, it's using the world against him." Layla nodded. "Exactly. Let him think you're weak. Then show him what resilience really looks like." Zuri inhaled slowly, grounding herself in that thought. She remembered the rhythms of earth, the pulse of drums at dusk, the heat of sun on skin, the sound of her mother's laughter. All of it became armor now, invisible but unbreakable. Raoul watched her with quiet pride. "Tomorrow the galaxy will witness what humanity stands for." Zuri met his gaze. "Not just humanity, justice." As night fell over Calithar, the twin moons rose, bathing the arena in pale gold. Zuri remained awake, her eyes tracing constellations she barely recognized. Each star seemed to whisper the same truth, that the path she had chosen could not be undone. When dawn came, she would step into the circle where legends lived and died, and whether she emerged victorious or fallen, the galaxy would remember her name. The first light of Calithar's twin suns cut through the dawn haze, casting long shadows over the arena. The ground still felt cold beneath Zuri's feet as she stood at the edge, her eyes locked on the vast expanse ahead. The air was dry and thick with anticipation, and she could almost feel the weight of history pressing in from every direction. This was the moment that would define not just her future, but the fate of her people. The crowd began to fill the terraces, alien delegates whispering amongst themselves, their voices blending with the rising winds that swept across the desolate landscape. From where she stood, Zuri could see the entire arena laid out in front of her, a circle of obsidian stone, the ground smooth and unmarred by time. Yet, beneath the pristine surface, the earth felt like it had witnessed centuries of bloodshed, the weight of past battles never fully erased. Raoul joined her, his presence steady, a reminder of the world she was fighting for. "You ready?" he asked, his voice low. Zuri turned to face him, her expression calm but her pulse racing beneath her skin. "I have no choice." Raoul gave her a brief, approving nod. "You've already shown them who you are. Now show them why you're here." Just then a hush fell over the crowd. Zuri's heart skipped as she turned toward the gates at the far end of the arena. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed, and then, like a force of nature, Varkor the Feral emerged from the shadows. The Drathan Warlord was a mountain of muscle, his towering figure draped in jagged, dark armor that glinted menacingly in the light. His eyes burned like molten metal, and the growl of his voice reverberated across the arena. "So this is the human who dares defy me." Zuri stood tall, her stance unwavering, her gaze locking with his. She felt the weight of the moment settle into her bones. He was everything they had warned her about, a predator, ruthless and powerful, his very presence a declaration of dominance. But she refused to back down. "Not defy," Zuri replied, her voice carrying across the arena with strength she hadn't known she had. "I challenge you." Varkor's lip curled in a snarl, showing the sharpness of his teeth. "This is no challenge. This is a formality." Zuri didn't flinch. "If you think so, then prove it." Raoul's voice behind her was quiet but urgent. "Don't underestimate him. He'll try to intimidate you, test your limits, but you've trained for this." Zuri didn't turn to look at him. "I know." Varkor raised his arm, signaling to the crowd. His followers roared in approval, the sound rumbling like thunder through the arena. Zuri's heart steadied, her focus sharpening. She wasn't here for the spectacle, she was here to win. Varkor's massive figure took a few steps toward her, his boots crushing the earth beneath him. Each step he took seemed to shake the very ground. The audience watched in rapt silence, the tension palpable, as though the universe itself held its breath. "Let's get this over with," Varkor growled. He pulled his weapon from his side, a jagged blade that gleamed like the edge of a dying star. Zuri took a deep breath. The weight of her own weapon, a sleek energy blade crafted from Earth's finest alloys, felt like an extension of herself. It wasn't the size of her weapon that mattered, it was the skill with which she wielded it. She raised it slowly, her gaze never leaving Varkor's. Then, without warning, the battle began. Varkor charged, his speed belied by his sheer size, his weapon swinging with the force of a collapsing star. Zuri moved quickly, rolling to the side and avoiding the first strike by inches. The ground beneath her feet trembled as the blade cleaved through the air where she had stood just moments before. She didn't hesitate. Her training kicked in, instincts guiding her movements as she countered, her blade meeting his with a flash of sparks. The impact reverberated through her arm, but she didn't flinch. Raoul's words echoed in her mind. "Control the fear. Let it sharpen you." The crowd roared, but Zuri's focus remained unwavering. Each movement, each strike, was calculated. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for Earth, for her people, for all who had ever been oppressed. Varkor growled, swinging his blade again, but Zuri was already gone, slipping behind him and using her agility to land a strike against his armor. The blow was precise but light, a message that she wasn't here to be intimidated. Varkor's anger flared. "You'll regret this, human." But Zuri didn't flinch. She was no longer just a woman standing in an arena. She was a force, one that would not be subdued. The clash of blades reverberated across the arena, a sharp metallic screech that pierced the air. Varkor's towering form swung his massive weapon with brutal force, each strike forcing Zuri to dodge and weave, narrowly avoiding being crushed under the weight of his fury. The crowd roared with each near miss, their cries a storm of excitement and fear. Zuri's breath came in quick, controlled bursts as she danced around him, her feet light against the dust-streaked ground. She could feel the heat of his presence, a furnace of power and rage, but she refused to be burned. Raoul's voice echoed in her mind. Control the fear. Let it sharpen you. Zuri's instincts kicked in, her every move fluid, calculated. Her blade, a sleek extension of her body, deflected Varkor's massive strikes with precision. Each time their weapons clashed, sparks flew, bright against the darkened sky. The ground trembled beneath their feet as they circled, two forces locked in a deadly dance. "You're faster than I expected, human," Varkor growled, his voice a low rumble that carried across the arena. He swung his blade again, this time aiming for Zuri's midsection. Zuri ducked under the strike, her movement swift and graceful, before rolling out of range. Her muscles burned with each movement, but her mind remained clear. She had trained for this. Every grueling hour, every cut and bruise had prepared her for the storm in front of her. Varkor's gaze hardened. "You've made a mistake," he snarled. "You can't outrun me." "You can't outfight me." Zuri met his eyes, a flicker of defiance in her own. "Maybe not, but I don't need to outfight you. I just need to outlast you." The Warlord let out a deep, guttural laugh, and for a moment, Zuri thought she saw a flash of doubt in his eyes. But it was gone as quickly as it came. He charged again, his massive frame moving with surprising speed. Zuri's mind raced. She had to keep moving, keep him guessing. She couldn't match his strength, but she could use his arrogance against him. She slid beneath his blade as he swung it down with terrifying force, narrowly avoiding the crushing blow. As he overextended, she saw her chance. She darted forward, aiming a swift strike to the gap between his shoulder and neck. The blow connected, but his armor absorbed the impact. Varkor roared in frustration, spinning to face her. "You think that will stop me?" Zuri didn't reply. She only breathed, her focus absolute. Her movements were quick, her strikes calculated, each one a small victory in the battle of wills. She danced in and out of his range, using the momentum of his strikes to her advantage. The crowd watched in hushed silence, the tension thick enough to cut. Every hit, every move felt amplified, like it was being etched into the very fabric of Kalithar itself. For all his size and power, Varkor seemed to be faltering, his movements growing less controlled with each passing second. Raoul's words returned to her. Let him tire himself out. Varkor, for all his strength, was a beast of raw power, and raw power had its limits. Zuri could feel him starting to wear down, his attacks growing sloppier as fatigue began to set in. She could see it in his eyes, the flash of anger, the need to dominate. But beneath it there was something else, doubt. "Not so invincible now, are we?" Zuri muttered under her breath, just loud enough for him to hear. Varkor's snarl deepened. He came at her again, faster this time, his eyes burning with fury. The weight of his presence seemed to darken the very air, but Zuri was already moving. She anticipated his next move, a downward strike aimed at her head. She ducked low and twisted her body, narrowly avoiding the crushing blow. In that split second, everything seemed to slow down. Zuri saw the opening, the unprotected side of Varkor's armor, where his strikes had left gaps. Without hesitation, she closed the distance between them. Her blade flashed, slicing across his exposed flank with surgical precision. Varkor staggered back, his eyes widening as the sharp sting of pain registered. You dare?" Zuri's voice was calm, but fierce. "I dare." She circled him, watching as he struggled to regain his composure. She was wearing him down, little by little. The Warlord was powerful, yes, but she wasn't trying to outmatch him in strength. She was trying to outsmart him. The crowd had fallen silent, every eye locked on the duel. It wasn't just a fight between two individuals anymore. It was a battle for survival, for the future of their people, for Earth. And Zuri wasn't about to let this Warlord take it from her. The arena trembled with Varkor's next furious swing. His massive frame moved like a storm, each strike meant to crush. Yet as Zuri danced around him, her movements quick and calculated, she began to notice something. The ground beneath her feet wasn't the only thing shifting. His attacks, once perfectly timed, were growing more erratic. The Warlord's breathing was heavier, his movements slower. Zuri's mind raced. He's tiring. She circled him again, her blade still poised, waiting. Each step felt like a countdown, the weight of her people, her ancestors, pressing down on her shoulders. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for Earth, for every individual who had ever been oppressed or forced into submission. Raoul's voice echoed in her mind, "You've got this, just don't lose focus." Zuri exhaled sharply and focused her gaze on Varkor. The Warlord was overconfident, convinced that his strength would be enough. It was his greatest weakness. Varkor swung again, but this time Zuri didn't evade. She met the strike head-on, her blade deflecting the impact with a resounding clash. The force of it pushed her back, but she was ready. She used his momentum against him, spinning to the side, her foot sweeping out to trip him. Varkor stumbled, falling to one knee. The crowd gasped in disbelief. The great Warlord, on his knees. "Not so invincible now, are you?" Zuri whispered. Varkor growled in frustration, pushing himself back up. "You think you've won, human. I am the Drathan. You cannot defeat me." Zuri's eyes narrowed. "The Drathan have conquered, but they've never won. True power isn't about strength, Varkor. It's about who you fight for." The Warlord's eyes flickered with something. Was it doubt? For a moment, the flicker of uncertainty was visible, just beneath the fury. But before Zuri could capitalize on it, he lunged at her again, this time with an unpredictable, wild desperation. The force of his attack sent a shockwave through the arena. Zuri barely managed to avoid the blow, her heart pounding in her chest. He's reckless now. She could feel it now, the turning point, the moment where the Warlord's own anger, his overconfidence, was his undoing. The crowd, previously on edge, now held its collective breath, waiting for the next move. Zuri stepped forward, steadying herself. This wasn't just about winning. This was about showing the galaxy that humanity was not a species to be trifled with, that Earth, with all its flaws and its history, stood unyielding in the face of tyranny. Raoul's voice came through her earpiece, steady as always. "Zuri, remember, don't fight with just your body, use everything." Zuri took a deep breath, then let it out slowly. She couldn't afford to get caught up in his frenzy. Instead, she needed to slow him down, make him feel the consequences of his mistakes. She moved again, not with brute force, but with precision. She used her surroundings, darting toward a pile of jagged rocks near the edge of the arena. As Varkor followed, she led him straight into her trap. Her blade met his again, but this time she guided his own weapon into the rocks. The sound of metal grinding against stone was deafening, and as the force of the collision reverberated through Varkor's arm, his weapon slipped from his grasp. The arena fell into a stunned silence. Zuri stood before him, breathing hard but steady, her weapon still in hand. She had disarmed him. Varkor's chest heaved as he glared at her, fury still burning in his eyes. But now the anger seemed less certain. His posture was less threatening, less imposing. For the first time, he looked human. "You lost," Zuri said, her voice calm but unyielding. For a moment, Varkor said nothing. Then slowly he dropped to one knee, his massive frame sagging with the weight of his defeat. The crowd waited, unsure what to make of this moment of surrender. Zuri didn't move, but she felt the weight of her victory settle over her like the first drop of rain after a long drought. She had done it, but more importantly, humanity had done it. As the silence stretched on, Raoul's voice once again filtered through her earpiece, but this time it was different. There was pride in it. "How you've shown them, Zuri, you've shown them all." Zuri's gaze remained fixed on Varkor. "The galaxy needs to understand something. This is how humanity fights." The crowd erupted in cheers, but Zuri wasn't listening. Her thoughts were elsewhere, focused on the Warlord who had underestimated the power of unity, the power of a species that would never surrender. The silence in the arena was overwhelming. It pressed against Zuri's chest, thick and unyielding, as if the entire galaxy were holding its breath. She stood facing Varkor, the Warlord now kneeling before her, his massive frame sagging under the weight of defeat. The crowd, which had once roared in support of his dominance, was now still, unsure of how to react. Zuri could feel their eyes on her, but she didn't look away from Varkor. Her pulse thudded in her ears, but her heart beat steady. She had won, and it wasn't just a victory of strength, but one of conviction. For a long moment, Varkor said nothing, his chest rising and falling with each ragged breath. His once mighty form was now diminished, a shadow of the terror he had once struck into the galaxy. The blade that had been an extension of his power lay discarded on the ground beside him, useless. "You are defeated," Zuri said, her voice low but filled with authority. "Your war is over." Varkor raised his head slowly, his molten eyes narrowing. "I've lost. But the galaxy will not forgive your defiance. The Drathan will rise again." His words were filled with venom, but Zuri could see the uncertainty flickering in his gaze. "You're wrong," she replied, her tone unwavering. "The galaxy will not rise in your image. It will rise in ours." The tension in the arena thickened. The weight of Zuri's words hung in the air like an unspoken challenge to the very foundation of intergalactic power. But instead of fury, what she saw in Varkor's eyes now was something else. Something unfamiliar. Fear. For the first time in this entire ordeal, Zuri felt a flash of triumph, not over Varkor but over the idea that had bound him and the other tyrants together. Power through fear. Power through submission. And she had proven that humanity would not bend to that. Behind her, Raoul's voice was a soft murmur in her ear. "You've done it. They see it now. They see what Earth stands for." Zuri didn't turn to him. She didn't need to. She felt it. She felt the shift. The galaxy, once so steeped in the hierarchy of power, was now teetering on the edge of something new. The fight wasn't over, but the tide had turned. Varkor's shoulders slumped, the fight leaving him. "You think this is the end?" he sneered, though the venom was now tinged with hesitation. "You think the galaxy will follow a human like you?" Zuri stepped forward, her movements steady and precise. "I think they'll follow those who choose peace over war, freedom over submission, and unity over division." She paused, looking down at him. "They'll follow those who show them a new way forward." Varkor glared at her, but even now the fire in his eyes was dimming. "You've won today," he said, his voice grating, "but this isn't the end. The Drathan will never forget this humiliation." Zuri knelt before him, her gaze unwavering. "Then we'll remind them that the future belongs to those who fight for it, not those who try to control it." She stood, turning to face the crowd, her back straight, her head held high. The arena was still silent, but the weight of her presence began to shift the atmosphere. For the first time, the delegates and soldiers from across the galaxy saw humanity not as a threat, but as a force for change. The message had been sent, loud and clear. Raoul and Layla stepped up beside her, their faces reflecting the pride and relief they both felt. The battle had been won, but this was only the beginning. Zuri knew the hard work lay ahead, rebuilding, forging new alliances, ensuring that the peace she had fought for didn't slip through her fingers like sand. But for now, she allowed herself to take in the moment. She had faced the Warlord. She had faced the fear, the doubt, and the immense weight of responsibility, and she had emerged victorious. "Let this be the moment they remember," Zuri said quietly, her voice carrying across the arena, "the moment the galaxy learned what humanity is capable of." The crowd began to stir, the first signs of applause rising in the terraces. Slowly at first, tentative, unsure, but it grew louder, more certain. The roar of approval began to build, echoing through the arena like a wave crashing against the shore. Zuri closed her eyes for a moment, letting the sound wash over her. The fight wasn't over, but this victory would carry her forward, carry them all forward. The turning point had come. The roar of the crowd still echoed in Zuri's ears as she stood at the center of the arena, Varkor now kneeling at her feet. The overwhelming weight of the victory had not yet settled, but it wasn't the applause that filled her thoughts. It was the realization that the galaxy was watching. Her actions, her defiance had sparked something far greater than just a duel. She had ignited a shift. The hum of the energy shields above the arena intensified as the delegates began to stir, their whispers loud against the silence that had once held them captive. Zuri stood tall, her gaze unflinching as she surveyed the room. Beside her, Raoul moved closer, his voice low but filled with a mixture of awe and concern. "This is it, Zuri. You've done what no one thought possible." "The balance is shifting," she nodded, her eyes scanning the sea of faces in the terraces. Some were skeptical, others fearful, but there was something in the air, something electric. The tension that had suffocated them for so long was finally beginning to dissipate. "Now we need to make sure it doesn't slip away," Zuri replied, her voice resolute. Layla approached, her steps quick and purposeful. She was already pulling up data on her wristband, scanning through reports from the other delegations. "The Drathan will not take this defeat lightly," she said, her brow furrowed. "But there's more at play here than just one warlord." Zuri turned to face her. "What do you mean?" Layla's eyes met hers. "The Drathan's alliance is tenuous at best, and now they're divided. Some of the factions are already questioning Varkor's authority. His defeat here will only fuel their unrest. There's a chance we can use this moment to sway others." Zuri's heart beat faster as the weight of Layla's words sunk in. "You're saying we can fracture their empire?" Layla nodded. "It's more than that. We can shift the entire power dynamic in the galaxy." "This is the opening we need." Raoul stepped forward. "It won't be easy. Many will hesitate. The Council will move cautiously, unsure of where to place their trust. We'll need to secure more than just Varkor's defeat." Zuri's gaze hardened. "I know." The words hung in the air, and for a brief moment, Zuri could almost feel the shifting currents of fate swirling around her. The path before her had been forged by her own hands, but now she was about to walk it with the weight of an entire galaxy on her shoulders. Every decision would matter. Every alliance, every word, would shape what came next. "We need to start moving now," Zuri said, her voice steady. "We have to gather support, show them we're the future they need. Not just the humans, but every species that's tired of the endless wars." Raoul crossed his arms, eyes locked on her. "And how do we do that?" "We begin with the Olarans," Zuri said, her voice gaining confidence. "They've been quietly sympathetic to our cause for some time. If we can win them over, we can break the deadlock in the Council." Layla nodded in agreement. "And then we approach the Kalari. They've been silent, but their merchant fleets are crucial to the galaxy's trade. If we offer them an economic alliance, we gain leverage." The strategy felt right, calculated, precise, but Zuri could feel the weight of it. She was no longer just a fighter in the arena. She was a diplomat, a leader, with the power to reshape the galaxy's future. Varkor, still kneeling before her, growled low, his pride wounded but his mind turning. "You won this round, human, but this victory will not last." His voice was rough, filled with bitterness. "You cannot change the stars." Zuri stepped closer to him, her eyes never leaving his. "Maybe not. But I can change the way we choose to live under them." The Warlord's eyes flickered with something between respect and fear, but it was fleeting, lost in the overwhelming pressure of the moment. The Drathan had been broken, but the path to lasting peace would be far harder to walk. Zuri turned away from Varkor and began to walk toward the exit of the arena, her steps purposeful. Raoul and Layla followed closely, but it was clear that this victory, hard-won and bittersweet, was only the beginning. Outside the arena, the Council representatives began to gather, their eyes on Zuri. Whispers filled the air. Some were filled with awe, others with doubt. Zuri stood before them, her posture straight, her resolve as unyielding as the walls that surrounded them. "I have proven that humanity is not to be underestimated," Zuri said, her voice ringing out across the chamber. "Now it's time for us all to prove what we're capable of." The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling over the Council like a fog. She could feel the shift, the hesitation beginning to crack, the first signs of the alliance that would change the course of history. The journey back to Earth was long and filled with silence. Zuri stood at the observation window of the ship, her eyes fixed on the vastness of space. The stars glittered like cold diamonds in the distance, but they no longer felt as far away as they had when she first left. Now, with the weight of her victory pressing against her shoulders, she could see the path ahead more clearly. Raoul was seated at the far end of the room, his broad frame leaning against the wall, arms crossed. His face was serious, but there was something softer in his eyes when he glanced at her. A quiet pride, perhaps, or relief. He didn't speak, and Zuri didn't need him to. They both knew that the hardest part of this journey wasn't the battle, it was what came next. Layla sat across from Zuri, eyes flicking between her datapad and the various reports she was compiling. The data from the galaxy-wide communications was starting to come in, the fallout from the challenge already beginning to spread across the Council and beyond. "Look at this," Layla said, glancing up, her voice a mix of astonishment and intrigue. "The Kalari are already reaching out. They want to start talks, and it looks like the Olorans are moving in the same direction." Zuri leaned over to see the incoming transmissions, her gaze scanning the words. She felt a rush of pride, but also the pressure. This was no longer just about her. It was about the future of humanity. "They'll want something in return," Raoul murmured, pushing himself off the wall to join them. "Nothing comes free, not in the galaxy's politics." Zuri nodded. "I know, but we have leverage now. More than we ever had before." Layla tapped the datapad. "I'm already looking into how we can make those offers without losing ground. The Kalari are interested in our tech, and the Olarans have been watching our advancements in agriculture. If we play our cards right, we can gain some real traction." Zuri stood and moved to the control panel, staring at the blinking icon that showed Earth's location, a pale blue dot among countless stars. She felt a pang of homesickness, a sudden longing for the familiar warmth of Earth. But there was more than that. There was the knowledge that she was bringing something back to her homeworld, something that could reshape everything. Raoul moved to her side, his expression thoughtful. "You're going to have to deal with a lot of resistance back home. Not everyone will be on board with this." "I know," Zuri replied, "but this is about more than politics. It's about survival." She turned to face him, her voice steady but firm. "Humanity has always fought for its place in this universe. We've always had to prove ourselves. But now, we're not just fighting to exist. We're fighting to thrive." Raoul met her gaze. "And that's a fight worth having." Zuri nodded, the quiet confidence in her heart growing stronger. She'd faced the Drathan Warlord. She'd fought not just for her own survival, but for the survival of Earth and its place in the galaxy. And she had won. The ship lurched slightly as it entered Earth's atmosphere, the familiar pull of gravity tugging at Zuri's body. Her thoughts drifted back to the people she had left behind, her family, her friends, the Coalition's leadership. There was much work to be done when she landed. "I've been thinking," Layla said, her voice breaking through Zuri's thoughts. "The next steps are critical. The Council will expect us to lead, but that doesn't mean we won't face opposition from within. There are those who want to keep humanity isolated, keep us from making these alliances. They're afraid of what comes with that kind of power." Zuri's gaze hardened. "They'll have to learn to face that fear, we all will." The ship began its descent toward Earth, the blue of its oceans and green of its landmass growing clearer as the planet's surface loomed large before them. Zuri felt her heart quicken with anticipation. She was returning home, yes, but she was also bringing a new vision, a new future. As the ship touched down, Zuri's hand rested on the cold, smooth window. She was no longer the same person who had left this planet months ago. She had stepped into a new role, one that would require every ounce of strength, wisdom, and courage she had. But she was ready. She turned to Raoul and Layla. "Let's go home." The landing on Earth was swift but silent. The soft hum of the ship's engines faded, leaving only the distant sound of the city's bustle outside the compound. Zuri stepped off the vessel, the familiar scent of Earth's atmosphere washing over her like a tidal wave. The air felt different now, thicker with memories and the weight of what had been accomplished. Her boots hit the tarmac, and for a moment she just stood there, letting the stillness surround her. The sky above was clear, the familiar blue that had once symbolized peace, now carrying a new meaning. Earth was no longer just home. It was a symbol of resilience, of humanity's strength to fight for its place in the galaxy. Raoul followed her off the ship, his face unreadable as he scanned the surroundings. Home, but it feels different. Zuri didn't look at him right away, her thoughts still tethered to the stars. It is different. We've changed, Raoul. The galaxy has changed. Layla stepped beside them, her eyes scanning the space, but she too seemed lost in thought. We've proven that humanity can lead. Now we need to prove we can sustain it. Zuri nodded. And we will. But it's going to take more than just us. It's going to take everyone. The air was filled with the hum of life as people moved through the compound, technicians and diplomats running to and fro. The war had not been won in the arena alone. It had been won in the hearts and minds of the galaxy, and now it was time to turn that victory into something lasting. Zuri's mind drifted to the future, to the alliances they would form, and the work they had yet to do. She had proven that humanity could stand tall, but now it was time to see how far that strength would stretch. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Zuri sat in her office, alone for the first time in what felt like ages. The weight of the day had settled into her bones, and her mind drifted back to the first steps of this journey. When she had stood before the council demanding change, it had felt like a distant dream, a hope more than a plan. But now, looking at the complex strategy unfolding before her, it felt real. The alliances, the negotiations, the power she would need to wield with careful hands. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. She looked up to see Raoul standing at the door, a rare smile on his face. "You've been staring at that screen for hours," he said, stepping into the room. "The world won't change overnight, Zuri." "I know," she replied softly, letting out a sigh. "But I'm not just staring at the screen, I'm thinking." Raoul leaned against the wall. "About what?" Zuri ran a hand through her hair, a gesture of frustration, or perhaps exhaustion. "About what comes next. We've shaken the foundation of the galaxy, Raoul, but the real work begins now. We have to keep the momentum going, keep forging these alliances. It's not just about politics. It's about changing the way the galaxy thinks, about changing the way humanity sees itself." Raoul nodded slowly. "It's a lot to carry." "It is," Zuri agreed. "But I'm not doing it alone." Layla entered the room quietly, her face lit with the glow of a new report. "The Olarans have agreed to formal talks. They're interested in a long-term economic partnership. It's a start." Zuri smiled, the first real smile she'd allowed herself in days. "It's a very good start." Layla sat down at the table, tapping the datapad she'd brought. "And I've been reaching out to the Kalari as well. They're cautious, but they're open. They're ready to see where this new path leads." Zuri stood, looking out the window at the sprawling city below, now bathed in the soft glow of the evening lights. "You know, when I was fighting Varkor, I didn't think about all of this. I didn't think about the politics or the people waiting for us to fail. I just fought because I knew what was right. But now I realize this fight is just beginning." Raoul joined her at the window, his gaze following hers. "And you're ready for it." Zuri turned to face him, the strength of her resolve shining through. "I'm ready. We're ready." Layla smiled at her, a glimmer of pride in her eyes. "The galaxy doesn't know what hit it." Zuri's expression softened. "And it doesn't need to. It just needs to know that humanity is here to stay." As they stood together, watching Earth beneath them, Zuri felt the weight of everything she had fought for and everything she would continue to fight for. The galaxy was changing, and she was part of that change. For the first time in a long while, Zuri felt at peace. The journey ahead would be long and hard, but she no longer feared what was to come. She was not alone, and together they would carve out a future where humanity's place in the stars was secure. Weeks had passed since Zuri's return to Earth, and the political landscape had begun to shift. The once stagnant halls of the coalition were now alive with the hum of discussions, treaties, and negotiations. What had begun as a single victory in the arena was slowly transforming into a series of actions that would shape the course of humanity's future. Zuri stood in the middle of the war room, her eyes scanning the reports displayed across the screen. The Olarans had formalized their alliance, offering advanced trade technologies in exchange for Earth's agricultural innovations. The Kalari had agreed to a provisional partnership, willing to test the waters of a deeper alliance. The galaxy's powers were watching closely, waiting for any sign that humanity's rise was anything more than a fleeting moment. Zuri knew this was just the beginning. Raoul entered the room, his usual calm demeanor replaced by a quiet urgency. The Kalari are pushing for faster negotiations. They want to finalize an economic pact within the month. Zuri nodded, her focus never wavering from the data before her. They're eager. The economic leverage they gain from our agricultural technology will be too valuable for them to resist. Layla, who had been reading through a new set of reports, looked up. But we need to make sure they don't push too hard. We don't want to appear desperate. If we want to make this last, we need to control the narrative, not just react to it. Raoul glanced at Zuri. She's right. We have to set the terms. Let them see that we are equals, not subordinates. Zuri turned from the screen, her posture shifting as she considered their words. The weight of leadership had settled onto her shoulders, more heavily than she had ever anticipated. But with it came a clarity, the realization that she was not just leading a people, she was creating a legacy, one that would endure long after the battles were forgotten. We will control the narrative, she said with conviction, but we will also remain open. The galaxy needs to see that humanity is not just here to fight, we are here to build. If we can show them that, we will carve our place in the stars. Raoul nodded. And what about the Drathan? They haven't exactly accepted defeat. Varkor may have fallen, but their anger hasn't gone anywhere. Zuri's eyes narrowed at the mention of the Drathan. She had known their reaction would be unpredictable, and she wasn't surprised. Their empire had relied on domination for centuries, but she also knew that the key to peace wasn't just in military victories or political agreements. It was in changing the mindset that had kept the galaxy locked in cycles of conflict. We'll send a message. Not through force, but through diplomacy, she said. We won't retaliate. We'll offer them the same choice we've given to everyone else, a chance to evolve or be left behind. Layla raised an eyebrow. And if they refuse? Then we'll be ready for that too, Zuri said. But the galaxy will know we gave them every opportunity to join the future. The door to the war room opened, and the soft shuffle of footsteps interrupted their conversation. A messenger entered, holding a datapad. He handed it to Zuri with a nod. The Council has finalized their decision on the Drathan's request for a new alliance. They've agreed to provisional talks, though it's clear the Olarans are watching closely. Zuri took the datapad, her fingers brushing against the cold surface. Good, it's a start. The messenger left, and the room fell quiet again. Zuri took a deep breath and looked at her companions, the weight of their shared mission pressing in on her once more. Today is a victory, she said, her voice steady, but the enormity of what lay ahead was clear in her eyes. But it's not the end. It's the first step in creating something lasting, something that will change the way the galaxy sees us, and I won't let anyone forget that. Raoul smiled faintly. You've already made sure they won't, Layla added, her voice full of quiet admiration. And you'll keep making sure they don't. Zuri's gaze shifted to the view outside the war room's windows, the sprawling city below where life went on, unaware of the monumental shifts happening beyond its walls. Her thoughts wandered to Earth's past, to the struggles of her ancestors, to everything they had fought for. She realized then that this wasn't just her legacy, it was theirs. The warriors, the leaders, the dreamers who had never given up. The galaxy had seen the strength of humanity, and now they would see its heart. She turned back to her companions, a determined smile forming on her face. Let's get to work. The sun rose over Earth's horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, casting long shadows over the sprawling cities below. From her balcony, Zuri gazed out at the world she had fought so fiercely to protect. The weight of everything she had accomplished, the victories, the battles, the alliances, rested lightly on her shoulders now. The fight had not been easy, nor was it over, but it was a fight she had won. The news feeds were already abuzz with the aftermath of her challenge to Varkor, the warlord whose name had once struck terror in the hearts of entire systems. The galaxy, it seemed, was changing, shifting, just as Earth had. Zuri had done what many believed impossible, but now it was time for others to step into the light, for humanity to take its rightful place in the stars. Raoul stood beside her, his eyes scanning the same view, though his mind was already a few steps ahead. "You did it," he said quietly, his voice full of pride. "We did it." Zuri nodded, the faintest of smiles tugging at her lips. "We did. But this is just the beginning, Raoul. We've started something bigger than us." Layla joined them, a datapad in hand, her expression one of quiet satisfaction. "The Kalari and the Olarans are already moving forward with talks. We've secured trade agreements, but they're watching carefully. They'll want more. They'll want to see if humanity can live up to the promises we made." Zuri looked at Layla, her determination unwavering. "We will. And we'll show them that we are more than conquerors. We are builders, peacemakers, and leaders." "Earth is just the first step." Layla smiled, the weight of their success settling into her bones. "It's a start. A big one." The soft hum of the city below reached their ears, a sound that, once, would have seemed so distant, but now it was familiar, a reminder that life had continued, even as the galaxy itself had shifted. Zuri took a deep breath, feeling the cool morning air fill her lungs. "When I was on Kalithar facing Varkor, I thought about how far humanity had come, how much we've endured, and I thought about what comes next, how much farther we still need to go." Raoul nodded, understanding. "But you've already proven that you can carry us, and the rest of the galaxy is watching. They won't forget the woman who stood up to a warlord and changed everything." Zuri turned to face him, her gaze sharp and focused. "I didn't do it alone, Raoul. I had you, I had Layla, and most of all I had Earth behind me. Every person, every culture, every history that came before me. It's all part of what we're building now." Layla's voice was soft but firm. "The galaxy has been watching us. We've shown them that we're capable of more than they thought. Now we have to show them that we're ready to lead." Zuri looked at both of them, her closest allies, and nodded. "We will. Together." The first rays of sunlight filtered through the clouds, and Earth below seemed to pulse with new life, as though the planet itself was awakening to a new era. Zuri felt that same stirring in her chest, the spark of something greater, something that could shape the future of not just Earth, but the entire galaxy. "This is our legacy," Zuri said, her voice strong with conviction, "and it will live on long after we're gone." Raoul smiled. "It will, and they'll never forget who made it possible." Layla nodded, her eyes bright with hope. "Humanity's future is just beginning, and we're here to make sure it's a future worth living." Zuri turned to the horizon once more, watching the sun rise higher, the light spilling across the world she had fought so hard to protect. The challenges ahead would be great, but Zuri knew now that humanity was not just surviving. It was thriving, growing, and ready to face whatever the stars could throw at them. And as the first rays of dawn touched the earth, Zuri knew with quiet certainty that the future had never looked brighter.